Sir Jimmy Savile, the corporation, and the establishment. How deep is the rabbit hole? There seems to have been a huge cast of people, potentially involved, or connected with the Jimmy Savile abuse story. The press over the years largely dealt with the obvious, but there is a potentially much larger web of intrigue, dating back to 1960, involving a wide section of people from many areas of British society. Those that do appear in this presentation are included because they were players in this extraordinary story. Please note, appearance does not imply that Out of the Dark Into the Light Entertainment has direct connection or knowledge of Savile's activities. It is a complex story. These are all names and stories in the public domain, and in their own way they were exposed by the national press. The real story should have covered how he was able to get away with abusing children for so many years. Jimmy Savile was at the center of this paedophile ring that procured children for well-known figures in the British establishment, including former British Prime Minister, paedophile and murderer, Edward Heath. Time after time, the name of this Jersey care home pops up in relation to characters connected with Savile. The previous investigation into the care home went cold, rather than exposing the scale of the abuse. A lot of important people in Jersey and further afield got concerned is a good guess. It was dubbed the House of Horrors, as scores of other bone fragments were unearthed, and lurid reports surfaced that shackles, restraints, punishment rooms, and a bath stained with blood had been found. The fear was that children, perhaps many, had been tortured and killed and their remains concealed. Operation Rectangle did unearth a terrible scandal. It brought to light a catalogue of abuse, sexual, physical, and psychological, at Eau de la Garenne and other Jersey children's homes stretching back to the end of the Second World War. Broadmoor. Of the many bizarre and unbelievable elements in the Savile case, is his connection with, and access to this secure mental hospital. Why? The hospital was first known as the Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum. It was built to a design by Sir Joshua Jebb, an officer of the Corps of Royal Engineers. From at least 1968, the television presenter and disc jockey Jimmy Savile undertook voluntary work at the hospital and was allocated his own room, supported by Broadmoor CEO Pat McGrath, who thought it would be good publicity. Jimmy Savile was given a free run in hospitals to turn up day or night, which allowed him to assault patients. And his senior role at the high-security psychiatric hospital was approved in 1988 by Tory Health Minister Edwina Currie. An inquiry has found that Westminster's institutions have turned a blind eye to allegations of child sex abuse for decades, with Margaret Thatcher accused of knowing Tory MP Peter Morrison, who had a penchant for small boys but did nothing about it. She later made him her private secretary and gave him a knighthood. The political establishment in Westminster has repeatedly failed to deal with allegations of child sexual abuse, covering up claims and protecting high-profile MPs including Sir Cyril Smith. Liberal leader Lord Steele also accused of an abdication of responsibility for failing to act. Cyril Smith, Liberal MP, and child abuser, he enjoyed abusing young victims from the 1960s, along with powerful people such as Ronnie Kray. It is believed that Cyril Smith and Ronnie abused numerous boys at care homes throughout the country. This is another man who was well known among his colleagues as being a bit of a perv, yet no one had the decency to report it. There is an obvious theme with all this abuse. People know, and do nothing. They conceal and cover up because of the damage that would be done to their political party. This isn't just an expensive fiddle we are talking about. It is the abuse of children and abuse of power. Edward Heath. One of those who stood most to lose was Sir Edward Heath, Prime Minister, from 1970 to 74, who was known to visit the Jersey care home, the Haute Garenne, where he would with others take young boys on boating weekends on his yacht called Morning Cloud, or, as bodyguards referred to it, Morning Sickness. Heath was warned on 4 occasions by the head of the Metropolitan Police not to loiter in London's lavatories, and not to try to pick up young boys. Nonetheless, he quickly fell prone to blackmailers who insisted he dress up in a ridiculous Gestapo uniform in which he was photographed. Under threat of exposure, Heath was forced to enter Britain into the common market, which became the European Union under unfavourable conditions. Sir Peter Hugh Morrison, parliamentary private secretary to Margaret Thatcher and named by one of the Welsh care home victims as one of the high-rankers who used the homes as a children's take-away shop. Isn't it extraordinary how many lords and sirs are involved in this? He's dead, but there are plenty others who are not. Investigative journalist Nick Davies reported in The Guardian that Morrison received a caution for cottaging with underage boys in public lavatories. Edwina Curry states in her autobiography Morrison regularly had sex with 16-year-old boys, whilst the legal age of consent at the time was 21 years old. In October 2012, Rod Richards, a former MP and ex-leader of the Welsh Conservatives, implicated Morrison in the North Wales child abuse scandal. Between 1974 and 1990, up to 650 children from 40 children's homes, such as Bryneston in Wrexham, were sexually, physically and emotionally abused. Richards said Morrison and another high-profile Conservative were named in documents as regular and unexplained visitors to the care homes. Stephen Milligan, Tory MP who was found naked and asphyxiated in an apparent tragic accident. What on earth does this have to do with Jimmy Savile? It's all about the network and the cover-up, and how the security services have been keeping the lid on the abuse ring that involves senior members of Parliament, and disposing of anyone who might be about to expose it. It seems reasonable to assume that the Welsh care home scandal and O'Donnell Garen were hushed up, and that Savile got away, and was rewarded for his activities. But as each day passes, and new claims and evidence emerge, it seems it becomes harder for them to keep a lid on this. Just as the police and authorities cover up embarrassing stories, so the Secret Service plant them to further their various aims. What may be of interest is the number of people who have died in suspicious circumstances. No sooner is there a chance of a scandal being exposed than the victim is found with a satsuma in their mouth, or perhaps locked into a suitcase. Bill Oddie, one of the three goodies, has gone on record saying there was a running joke about Savile at the BBC, everyone knew, and he suspects a cover-up due to Savile's friendship with Prince Charles.
As it happens, I'm fairly relevant to that time, because and to what Jimmy Savile was doing, because he was his job. He was presenting Top of the Pops. He was doing BBC shows and one sort and another. Had Jim Will Fix It, was a show where the youngsters wrote in and said we want something arranged we've always wanted to do. And I'd done that show a couple of times, so yeah, I wouldn't say I knew him, because I just found him unapproachable. This was not a human being, it's a caricature, some strange caricature. But, and it's already been said in the paper, so I'm not taking any great risks by saying it, anybody in that era just sort of, we know he's up to something. He just had a reputation of being, I think, a groper, really. I'd certainly never heard anything about that. The most awful aspect, which is the idea of molesting kids in hospital. That is just unbelievable, and sort of bribing his way out of it by giving £1 million to the hospital. That is staggering. But the idea that youngsters were a bit of a prey, everybody knew that, which is why it's so extraordinary that there's any sort of mystery. And when the ex-head of BBC, Mark Thompson, the other week said, well, it's the first I've heard it, I don't know anything about it. You think, head of BBC and you don't know that? Don't be ridiculous, that's absolute nonsense. So, no, I wasn't surprised at all. Mm-hmm. And obviously the surprise is, in a sense, that didn't happen years ago. And what is it about the who and the establishment or whatever it is, I don't know, that decided to keep it all quiet and give him an OBE? He's a friend of, not an OBE, a knighthood, I'm sorry. He was, to a certain amount, a friend of royalty as well. It won't be the last. The only, and this is not a mitigating circumstance, obviously, but the only thing I will say, which hasn't been said very much, it is occasionally in the things I've read, is that was a time in history and television and radio and live shows and so on and so forth, where the sort of naive groupie scene, I think I'd call it, because I don't think the girls were incredibly promiscuous, certainly not the younger ones, but frankly, when you get a bit higher up, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that, then, yeah, there were people who just hung around after gigs and tried to get to the stars or the disc jockey or whatever. I've got a booby prize, though, if you went for, I don't know, some Cliff Richard or something and ended up with Jimmy Savile.
Yeah. Why do you think it took so long to come to light?
I have no idea. I don't know why it took so long. That's what I'm curious about, is, you know, whether there is somewhere in Britain some sort of censorship committee that we don't know about who suppresses these things, and somebody gets together in a room and says, you know, well, we better hadn't say, we all know about Jimmy, but come on, he was a friend of Prince Charles. I mean, it looked awfully bad on Prince Charles if we start saying he was a bit of a perv, wouldn't it? And somebody decides, yes, you're quite right, we'll keep it quiet, you know, nobody will ever find out. I don't know who that would be then. I really don't know who that would be, you know.
Esther Ranson, founder of Childline and TV presenter, along with others, has given a rather uncomfortable reason for not reporting Savile's activities.
The truth is always the best way forward.
Given that you went on to found Childline and you campaigned to protect vulnerable young people, did you not ever think of taking up these rumours, not perhaps with the authorities, but at least with BBC bosses?
It would have been completely irrelevant to anything that I was working on. I had nobody had ever complained to me. Of course, if a child had come to me, or a young person had come to me, or Childline, we would have acted upon it. But all I heard was gossip in the office, and I never worked in his department, although I did once or twice appear on Jim Will Fix It. It was only as a guest. So I never played a part in his life or in his career, and nobody ever complained to me.
Well, office gossip is one thing, but to hear allegations about a colleague and child abuse is something else. How far up the TV ladder do you think these rumours went?
I have no way of knowing that. I do know that one of the people interviewed in this programme witnessed Jimmy Savile actually abusing a child in his dressing room. But what she did with that information, who heard about it, who decided whether or not to proceed, I cannot tell you. I don't know.
Well, the BBC have released a statement saying it found no evidence or any misconduct or even any allegations, so really it's not possible for them to take any further action. But given that he was a star of the corporation and some of these alleged abuses were said to have taken place at BBC TV Centre, is that good enough?
Well, it's not just the BBC. Jimmy worked across the board, across the media. He worked for ITV, he made commercials, famous ones for British Rail and Clunk Click. So there were any number of people who worked with him in many, many different areas of work. I think we all contributed. I think his fans, the viewers, the audiences, we all helped to create this iconic figure who was beyond reproach, who was beyond suspicion. And that meant that the people he victimised did not feel able to ask for help.
What would you like to see done now? Because for his alleged victims, it's too late for them to seek any form of justice.
Well, I'm hoping that the people who have now spoken out and told the truth about what he did to them will feel some kind of healing. These memories are always extremely painful, very difficult to live with, and I'm hoping that now they will begin to get some sort of capacity to move on. And if there are others who have suffered in the same way, I hope they will be inspired to speak out, because the truth is always the best way forward. Because the truth is always the best way forward. 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 The truth is always the best way forward.
Dunblane. Thomas Hamilton walks into a school and kills a number of children. He holds a valid gun license, issued despite warnings. He is a local scoutmaster and apparently supplying pictures for a paedophile network. The inquiry results, which did not investigate the rumors of the ring, were placed under a 100-year notice to protect the children. It makes you wonder how long they will put the Savile inquiries under lock and key. Peter Wrighton, expert in childcare, vice chairman of governors and in 1992, a convicted paedophile. His name is cropping up because there is a trail running from him to Parliament and Downing Street. Surprisingly, the police did not follow the trail. The Krays had access to many children's homes across London. They would also have boys delivered to parties at a large flat over a music shop along the Lea Bridge Road, northeast London, owned by the former Radio 1 DJ Alan "Fluff" Freeman. There they would meet with showbiz types and DJs including Jimmy Savile, Joe Meeks, and on occasion, Beatles manager Brian Epstein. At these parties, young boys were specially brought over from several children's homes and they would be plied with drugs and alcohol. The parties came to an end when police chiefs suspected that the MP and ex-Liberal Party leader Jeremy Thorpe was allegedly attending them, along with several other prominent ministers, politicians and MI5 operatives. Afterthoughts. Although this presentation covered old ground, Odell is convinced there was, and still is, systemic failing and abuse in the system. Not just at the BBC but in every organisation where dubious people can gain access to children. The good thing about the Savile case is that it has allowed some of these skeletons to surface. Many earlier trails have gone cold or been deliberately stopped. Odell hopes that the public doesn't just think it stops with a couple of arrests, or that Gary Glitter or Jimmy Savile are the only people that the population needs to worry about. Right now, the public is looking for a celebrity or two, and to give the BBC a good old kicking. That may be enough to satisfy the desire for action, but the whole child abuse connected to the establishment will always cease through the lack of further evidence. Senior people will breathe a sigh of relief.